Hi,
Let me
everybody.
do some quick housekeeping while we're letting all these stragglers come in. Thursday, we have a top advisor office hours with Dr. Jeff Spencer. Dr. Spencer was not only an Olympian, but he's the coach and advisor for U2, Richard Branson, Tiger Woods, Lance Armstrong. He's an absolutely amazing human being. So excited about that. We have our business development club kicking off on the 8th. So Christine Campbell Rappin is going to be leading that for anyone who that entrepreneurial hat that says sales and marketing. That's kind of probably the heaviest hat we wear. She can help you out, and we're excited to launch that club. We've got an in real life meetup in Greenwich, Connecticut. We're going to a polo match. There's a in real life meetup in Newport Beach, California with Robert Hamilton Owens and a bunch of others. We've got Running Man coming up with Jesse Itzler in September. And we have our Hoosier Oprah cohort coming up in September as well. And August is packed. We've got Chris Shembra. We have Destin Bell. Destin got a deal from Damon Johns on the inaugural episode of Shark Tank for this past season. And Destin is amazing. Absolutely love the guy. So anyway, we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. For anyone who's new to an author spotlight, the format is Keren and I will kind of do a little bit of a fireside chat for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for live Q&A. So if you have a question for her, just put in the chat, I have a question. You don't have to write it out, and then we'll tee you up and you can ask your question directly to Keren. But I am super excited to have her with us today. So let me give you just a tiny little bit of background. So she is a top 10 executive coach as per ICF and Real Leaders and Goop. She coaches everything from Olympic athletes to Fortune 500 leaders to founders. She has an incredible podcast called Coached. She's worked for iconic brands like the LA Times, Cosmopolitan. She's a smarty pants. She went to the London School of Economics. You might have seen her on the Today Show. Her TED Talk has got like 500,000 plus views. And she's the author of an incredible book that she's on a book tour right now called Gilded. And we're going to talk all about that today. So without any further ado, we have an introduction. Kathy, hit it.
I don't fit in the box, I was born to stand out. Living life in my terms, I've erased all doubt. With passion in my heart and a spark in my eye. I'm the storm, I'm the lightning cutting through the sky. Welcome to the top where the fearless reign, where the dreamers build what the doubters disdain. I'm fierce, I'm bold, I'm the cream of the crop, bodacious and proud. Welcome to the top. Welcome to the top. Oh, bodacious, audacious, no ceiling, no end. Loquacious, vivacious, legends ascend. An outlier rising, no chains, no block. This is my moment. Welcome to the top.
Welcome, Keren.
Thank you, Scott. What an introduction. Hi, everybody. It's such a pleasure to see so many of you here. Thanks so much for showing up, y'all.
Oh my goodness. Cannot wait. I have been counting down the minutes, and I have way more questions than I have time to ask, but we're going to dive right in. I would love to know, let's start out with what was the catalyst in writing Gilded And how did your personal story shape the book's message?
Well, like any author, I originally started writing a book because I thought it would be good for business. Luckily, that did not work out. And after 7 years, you heard correctly, in literary purgatory, the seventh circle of hell again and again and again with some of the best agents on the planet, I am proud to tell you, I scrapped the whole thing and I decided to write essentially a love letter to my clients. And that's where my personal story comes in. Gilded is written from an unusual perspective in the personal development genre, as it is aimed primarily at overachievers. Overachievers have two interesting complications, if you will. The first is we don't come to the work like normal people. We're far more skeptical usually. We're more resistant to the work. And the second is when we do come to the inner journey work, it takes us a little longer to sink into the feelings. And so from that understanding, I built essentially a program, a 12-step program, my own Alcoholics Anonymous for workaholics. And as a recovering one, I wove in my story of complete crash and resurrection as well, using myself as example and as Sherpa.
So your background, I mean, it all looks phenomenal. You had everything.
Yeah.
What happened? What changed? And what made you realize you were in a gilded cage?
Oh, it's so wonderful. So you guys know that incredible introduction that Scott made, basically portraying me as the something like a cross between the Messiah and the Dalai Lama. Luckily, I know very well at this point that all of those benchmarks are not particularly the human story. If I were to describe myself, I would say I'm a cat person who's obsessed with Frasier and who reads a lot. And that's basically the best description. But that doesn't get you booked on too many gigs. So we go with this. What happened to me was, Scott, essentially more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I had achieved basically everything that you're supposed to achieve. I was really thin. I hadn't eaten since the 90s. I was married to a tall man, which we all know is the apotheosis of everyone's, the culmination of all feminine dreams. I had gone to not one, but two extraordinarily prestigious schools and graduated at the tippy top. I had secured bomb-ass jobs that looked really, really fantastic. By the time I'm in my very early 30s, I'm a C-suite executive. I'm making multiple six figures, and I'm living in the most beautiful house anyone has ever seen. Now, here's where the gilded cage part comes in. This is where I have to wake up and acknowledge at some point that the marriage is horrific. I was in an abusive marriage. Number two, that the apartment, while it was very beautiful, was in Zurich, which is, for people who are familiar with Zurich, a city that never stops stopping. The other reality was that while I was in a business or career that looked really fantastic, and there was nothing wrong with the job. It really wasn't my job. I wasn't waking up eager for the day. I didn't think that being a marketing director was the culmination or apotheosis of all my desires. And so luckily, I picked up a book then called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It gave me enough courage to start moving towards a divorce. That was the first thing that I started to destroy. And then really follow that inner journey through the complete shedding of that persona that looked so good on Instagram, but felt so terrible on the inside, little by little, reassembling my life to something that just feels good to me. And that's now what I help people do.
I love it. What are some of the first steps someone can take to break free from perfectionism and kind of that relentless pursuit of more?
How many people here identify with the word perfectionism, even if they don't want to admit it? How many people here understand what relentless pursuit of more feels like? I just got one thing done. I got to go to the next. Yeah. And that, by the way, is a very, very typical, primarily of overachievers, but also of entrepreneurs. The first thing that you can do is a step I borrowed from the other 12-step program, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is admit that you have a problem. The first chapter in the book is admit it, your life doesn't feel as good as it looks. And while people think that that is not an overt step, it actually is not only a big step, it is also the hardest step. The hardest step is looking at your life that looks absolutely magnificent in many, many ways, that has done the right quote unquote thing for so many years, and say, why doesn't this feel good to me? And it doesn't feel good to me. It's a very difficult admission. If you've ever worked with people who are actual addicts, and I work with a lot of addicts, the first thing they'll tell you is, I can quit anytime, which, by the way, is a joke. That's never true. We are the same. So many of us think that we have workaholism under control, and we don't. And it's truly important to just recognize that this is not working for us. And there are two ways to reach this admission. Number one is to recognize that your results don't please you. You are not where you thought you should be. By the way, super typical of middle age. I just added another category. But the second is just your feelings. And many of us don't stop to acknowledge our feelings, which is very hard to do in the age where you can just go right back to scrolling. But if you did stop for a second and did acknowledge your feelings, many people would recognize that they feel aimless, that they feel restless, that they feel bored, that they feel uninspired. Those are not dominant emotions. They shouldn't be dominant emotions. There is another way to live. And if you stop for long enough to go, oh, I think something's wrong here. For me, it's usually something else. I get really snippy for very long periods of time. Has anybody else been hangry without being hungry? And when I start doing that, it means that I've been in the opposite direction for a long time. So that's it. That's the first step. And from there, the second step will be to start to examine the elements of your life and probe them for whether or not they are the desired paths you should be on right now. Now, the book will guide you through all 12 steps, but that's the beginning. And it's huge. It's literally like 50% of the journey.
So many people, Keren, they struggle with external validation. And what advice would you give to people who they just feel empty, despite the fact that they have outward success?
First, I would say it's really normal where you are. It's very common. So you should understand that there is actually a void in achievement. I think I quoted one of the books about Alexander Hamilton in my book, that this is literally the wretch or the plight of the overachieving man or the overachieving woman, is that it comes with this bottomless pit. And so the emptiness really is almost, it's an addiction, right? It's just unfillable. The reason for that emptiness is that you're not turning your attention to what actually will fill you, which is purpose or meaning. So for that, I want to talk a little bit about what meaning means, take it out of the abstract. But in order to really even reach that point, I want to address first the power of external attention. Why do these things have our attention so much? It's because they're very delicious. And it's also because society agrees with them. Listen, when I'm talking to the C-suite at Nike, they got numbers to report. They've got actual goals. And if they don't meet those goals, they will probably not stay in their positions. So this is a very survivalist factor, and there is a primordial response to that. The second is, of course, that society agrees. What do you think's happening on LinkedIn? People are constantly validating each other. And if we don't get that validation, we're a little sad. It's a dopamine hit that we become completely addicted to. So recognize how dominant these things are, and then you'll recognize how important the counterbalance is, because otherwise it'll just suck you in. It's just like any algorithm. If you allow it to take your attention, it will completely dominate your attention. And so the counterbalance is to develop meaning and to really emphasize meaning in your life. Meaning, like happiness, sounds like an abstract term, but is not an abstract term. Meaning is composed of two things. Number one is service, and number two is appreciation or gratitude. I prefer the word appreciation. Active appreciation is the act of observing your life and doing all things from a place of deep gratitude. Really appreciating the chance to be here, the chance to talk to y'all, the chance to read, the ability to have access to Netflix, which has legit changed my life, the proximity to cats. That is already a state of reverence, really hard to feel empty, really hard to feel empty. But the real holy high kahuna is that first component, service, tethering everything that you do to something bigger than you. I like to say that I got married so I could have a sense of meaning in my life. My life is about something way bigger than myself. It's about my household. It's about the community. It's about a service to another human being. It's about the elevation of values, the magnification of values. That is so much bigger and so much more profound than the money ever did for me before, and the great outfits on Instagram ever did for me before. So when we start to really tip the balance in favor of this, another really amazing thing that happens is you kind of stop being afraid. You stop feeling perfectionist standards. You stop feeling imposter syndrome. You literally just show up because it's not about you anymore. When it's not about you anymore, it's all fun.
You know, I think you said you took a blowtorch to your life and started over at 40.
Mm-hmm.
That had to come with a ton of fear.
Mm-hmm.
How did you push through that fear to get to the transformation?
Well, I'd love to tell you that I was extremely courageous and nothing fazed me. I was absolutely ready. But I did it scared. That's how I did it. The thing that was working for me was that what I was torching to the ground was not worth anything to me anymore. I didn't care about that marriage. I couldn't stay in that job. I was not staying in Zurich for another second of my life. When you get lucky like me and you're served a matzo ball of trauma, it's a lot easier to blowtorch some of the elements of your life. By the way, it also came with an actual fire. I lost all of my things in a fire in the middle of the divorce. That part was actually much more painful than the divorce. But I also saw it as a metaphoric starting over. Today, I can tell people that the best way to find the courage to eliminate the elements that are not for you anymore is to know that the outcome is really good. The payoff is tremendous, as a matter of fact. If I saw the size of the blessing that was coming at the end of the decade, I would have gone running, not kicking and screaming as I did. It's been beyond worth it. And the reason it's beyond worth it is because maintaining lies is extraordinarily hard. Perfectionism is a form of lying. I like to call it lying with a spritz of Febreze. It's really not easy to live that way. It's actually quite painful to live that way, to maintain a facade. And after a while, like George Costanza on Seinfeld, someone's going to figure out that you're lying, and it's going to get harder and harder to lie. Thank you, Jennifer, for also being a Seinfeld fan. I always find it offensive when people don't get my George Costanza references. It just becomes inevitable. It's like Brene Brown says, you either do vulnerability or vulnerability will do you. And you have to just make that choice that I'm not going to do this anymore. Now, of course, everybody in top is advantaged here because we have each other and because we are already courageous human beings for being here. But whenever you have to do something big, one of the best things that'll help you is just playing the odds in your favor rather than playing the odds not in your favor, which makes you play defense for way too long.
Keren, you've kind of coupled executive coaching with some spiritual traditions, and married those two together. How has that informed your approach to personal growth and ambition?
Well, at first, Scott, because I was trying to get hired, I kind of downplayed the Kabbalah and the law of attraction and even the term self-love. I'm like, let's just not bring the Brene into this environment, because believe it or not, many people were quite allergic, saw it as woo-woo, and automatically positioned you in a category. But the beauty of being multidisciplinary is starting to understand two things. Number one, that all philosophies are useful. And number two, that most philosophies that are congruent within each other. In other words, the law of attraction actually does not contradict Patrick Lencioni's work, for example, in executive coaching, or Brene Brown's work. It's all about integrity. And that's actually when I started to fuse personal coaching with executive coaching, because I started to understand that this isn't business coaching. Business coaching is an advanced form of coaching that I always offer to people who are scaling businesses to wherever they want to go. But in executive coaching, I believe how you feel is how you lead. And that's the most dominant thing about how you're going to lead. There is no point teaching tactics to someone who is still making Faustian bargains and therefore compromising, unbeknownst to them or beknownst to them, their ethics. As a result, we really focus here quite heavily on more spiritual, more esoteric disciplines. And they're just really useful for conceptualization. They're also very useful for getting in touch with the spirit, which most people find, even though they resisted at first, like I did, is a really nice, gentle way to live.
You know, I think an important topic, like there's healthy ambition and then there's toxic perfectionism. How do you tease out one from the other?
Yeah, so it's very easy in two ways to tease one from the other. The first is the healthy varietals don't hurt. I have very high standards, as you guys can obviously see. But I'm not going to beat myself up for missing a workout, for not having my hair professionally done today, for misspeaking, for making a typo in one of my newsletters. As a matter of fact, I embrace typos in newsletters because that's how y'all can see that ChatGPT didn't write them. Toxic ambition gone awry, perfectionism gone awry is very painful. It's filled with anxiety and catastrophizing. The second reason it explains why. They're also divergent in their outcome desire. The healthy version, the outcome that you desire is win-win, good for all, elevation of humanity, etc. There are service benefits that are not about the ego. The second kind of ambition is taking for the self. Now listen, I got to check myself too all the time, Scott. Sometimes the numbers are real pleasing. And unfortunately, when the numbers are real pleasing, you're like, yay, more for me. And that's when you have to go, uh-oh, I'm walking into a bear trap again, aren't I? This is going to hurt. This is going to hurt. What goes up always comes down. So you have to just basically become mindful. The way out of one form to the other is not to eliminate one. It's to become aware of where you are, to become aware, like an inner GPS system going like mine, recalculating route. Yeah. And to reorient yourself at what actually will not bite you in the ass.
What patterns do you notice for people that are susceptible to burnout? Especially you work with a lot of high achievers, athletes, high performers. What are those patterns that kind of lead you to believe, oh boy, this person's in real danger of burnout?
First is the way they speak. Burnout is similar to depression, but it's not identical. I'm not a diagnostician. Very, very important distinction between coaching and therapy or psychotherapy. So it's not my place to gauge. But what I've learned, because I've been a volunteer on a suicide hotline for a very, very long time, and I've been doing this for 8 years now, is the first pattern that you'll notice is the way that they speak. And the way that they speak sounds detached, disenchanted. It's almost like it's not even boredom. It's like ennui. You know what I mean? I like aggression. Angry means you still have some energy. But if you're like, I don't know, and it might not work, and I've tried everything, and you might be burning out. You're very, very tired. You sound tired. And that's a very unusual state for overachievers, is that loss of energy. So what we're usually looking for is loss of energy. The second thing we're looking for is a degree of cynicism that belies a degree of perhaps hopelessness. In that case, you might be already in the category of grief. And if you're in the category of grief, again, we also know what to do. But that basically means that the momentum is taken off here. You're at a more advanced stage of the burnout.
Just curious about this because I think there's a counter that I hear sometimes about burnout. Mm-hmm. So it seems like everyone, and I'm exaggerating, I'm just making up numbers, 90% of people say they experience burnout. If you ask people in the 50s, 60s, 70s, if they ever burned out, I think the percentage would be incredibly low. Is there a difference Are we just more aware, or what's going on?
Well, you're asking a coach. So I think the numbers are far too inflated on all ends, including for anxiety and depression, certainly overprescribed. And that's because most are not real burnout. Real burnout is a collapse. It's like grief. You can't function. Most of us do not know moments like this, except for, unfortunately, in grief, which will come to us all. Has anybody here ever been in real grief? I'm sorry to say, me too. But it knocks you out. It knocks you out of the game. I was out for 7 weeks. Me, not even answering LinkedIn messages, Scott. Can you imagine?
Shocking.
Exactly. And so the real burnout situation is, I think, far overreported. What we're dealing with most of the time is overwhelm, and perhaps chronic overwhelm. We've really become used to thinking in a way and working in a way that is unproductive and exhausting. And what we should learn how to do is to work within the confines of our real behavioral style and our true preferences, which will make you far more productive and far happier. And that's available to, in my estimation, correlational data only, friends, to 90% of people.
You know what? I think so many people are searching for clarity on what really matters to them. What are there questions, or are there specific exercises people can use to get that clarity on what matters? Because I really think for most people, they're just so on autopilot, they're not really sure what matters to them. And when you ask the question, they're kind of like, oh boy, I don't really know.
I know, but you don't know because you haven't applied thought to it. It is available to you, and you do know. In chapter 7 of my book, which is the longest chapter, I walk you through several exercises through this. And I'm going to talk to you about what you're aiming at. What you're aiming at is purpose, or what Gay Hendricks calls the zone of genius versus the zone of excellence. Anybody here familiar with The Big Leap? Me too. And those who are not, you have to read it again. Gay Hendricks is the nicest man in the world. He blurbed my book, and he has 2 cats. So if that doesn't make him an epic coach, I don't know what does. The Big Leap posits that the problem for most overachievers is we get stuck in zone of excellence. The zone of excellence is the zone in which, and I won't walk you through all 4 quadrants, is the zone in which we're very well compensated for what we do very well, but is not our zone of genius. Our zone of genius, by contrast, is what we are inimitable at, what is a natural thing for us, what we truly prefer because it's super easy for us. And it's very hard for us to miss our zone of genius because it's actually so easy. And of course, we live in a society that rewards complexity, hard-earned things, right? And so many of us end up, I don't know, becoming like consultants or something, zone of excellence, very well paid, very focused work in areas in which you're legit pretty good, but not doing that which wakes you up eager for the day. To rediscover what wakes you up eager for the day, just what you prefer, not even zone of genius or purpose, just what you prefer. One of my favorite exercises, I'm going to give you 2 for funsies. Number 1 is, remember who you were when you were 6 or 7 or 8 years old. When I started thinking about that, I remembered that I was actually a lot like Manny from Modern Family, a chubby theater kid who was obsessed with Shakespeare and read a lot and never went outside. And I just thought about the fact that I haven't done that in years. I haven't read in a very long time. I haven't performed ever in my career. And this starts moving me down a rabbit hole that turns me eventually into a coach and into a teacher. That was that. The second exercise I want to recommend, and I'll be very happy to recap this in notes and post on LinkedIn and tag y'all so that you can see it if you don't want to buy the book. The second that I really, really love is think human, not resume. The way to think human and not resume is forget for a second the LinkedIn. Literally start thinking about what components of your life you would highlight to someone you are on a 6th date with. You know how on like date 6, you start really have long talks, which, by the way, if you're married, you know you will never have again. My husband's listening threshold was maxed out at date 6. And at date 6, you really talk about your dreams and your ambitions and your passions and your loves, and you share stuff that you really want the other person to be interested in as well, right? I made my husband sit through all 5 seasons of The Crown when I was still able to force him to do things. It was an amazing thing. And that's essentially when you start to reveal your humanity and your human preferences. And don't be too worried about what comes up here. When things come up like I'm obsessed with television, we start immediately thinking about externals again. How's that ever going to make me any money? Well, believe it or not, professional speakers and people like Mindy Kaling have made a lot of money from their obsessions with television. So don't cast doubt on what comes up for you. Just do the exercises openly and let yourself basically just pour it out into paper. Now, let's say that these don't work for you. No problem. Just write out all the stuff you don't want and all the stuff that doesn't light you up. Because when we know clearly what we don't want, we know very well what we do want. This was one of my exercises for finding a great husband. Here's what I don't want. Let's describe my ex in exceptional detail. That was it. It makes it pretty easy to be very clear on who you really are. I hope that's helpful, Scott. That was a lot of information. Again, I'm happy to put it down on paper. Thank you, Rich.
Super helpful. You've had a ton of success. How do you stay grounded and maintain your authenticity with all this stuff going on?
Oh, I don't. I travel with a camera crew. I'm always wearing silks, and I demand that every green room have only yellow M&Ms to welcome me. No, it's very easy to stay grounded. I know whom I serve. This glory is not for me. This glory is for God and for the universe. This has absolutely nothing to do with you. And anyone who's been on the other side who knows what this work is like, there are coaches here, there are therapists here who know what it's like to talk to people who are going through a divorce, who are changing careers, who have lost a child. You understand that this work has absolutely nothing to do with you. And that's what keeps you not only grounded, but deeply rooted in the honor that this work is.
I think it's an interesting time. We're living in a time where there are seemingly more coaches than there are clients. I mean, everybody's a coach. And part of it is there's no barrier to entry. So everybody can just raise their hand and say, hey, I'm a coach.
Yeah.
So your podcast, Coached, which is excellent,
Thank you.
Talks about master coaches. I think finding coaches and having coaches in your life, whether it's a formal or informal relationship, is insanely important.
Yes.
But how do you distinguish somebody who's good and can really help you from the people who are just like, yeah, you know what? I kind of don't want to do corporate anymore, so I'm going to be a, fill in the blank coach.
Well, here's first some good news. 82% of personal coaching businesses fail within 2 years. So while people are entering 82%, yes. And I know because I just wrote a new program that launches next month called Coach with Enthusiasm, which is a coach prep program only for coaches. And by the way, only coaches who've been in the game at least 2 years, because otherwise I'm not working with you. Warm hugs, Keren. And that's because this is like the real estate industry. It's very alluring, low barriers to entry, very high potential for earnings. So many people are like, hey, I'm 25 years old. People ask me for advice. I might as well become a coach. Don't hire 25-year-olds to do anything for you, let alone to help with your mindset. But God bless them. They're very talented, I'm sure. But do you remember what you were like at 25? I didn't know anything. So that's the first thing. The first thing is to really understand that seasoning is very, very important, particularly for those of us who are on this side. We're overachieving superstars. We deserve people who are at our level. The second thing is rapport. You genuinely connect to their story. You see that they've overcome something to which you really relate. And that means that you have a natural understanding with each other. All teachers are truly people who have experienced what you are experiencing. And I think that's absolutely critical to the experience. And the third is mastery or knowledge, command of the actual concepts of and methodologies of coaching. That usually, that seasoning comes not only with time, but with provenance. So I look for International Coaching Federation certification, which is the gold standard in a Wild West industry, just to see that they can apply some effort into their work and also tether themselves to a body of ethics. I also look for their disciplines of practice. I'm a devout Jungian, and I also love law of attraction and Kabbalah. In other words, the methodologies that I'm using might be very, very appealing to people. In all, that packaging will either be the right one for you and you'll feel it, or it won't be the right one for you and you'll feel it. And that's usually what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a seasoned coach.
Why did the 18% succeed and the 82% fail?
I've thought about that a lot, Scott, and I have several answers. But I think that the main answer is the same answer I give to anybody who succeeds at anything. And this is kind of a Jim Collins answer. They don't take shortcuts. They do things right. They do the right things at the right time. They do not underestimate their ability and they do not overestimate their ability. They do the work. If you're willing to do the work because you love the work, which is, by the way, the only thing that's going to make you do the work without shortcutting and cheating, you're going to get to the other side. There are no exceptions. By the way, another excellent book shout out, Good to Great by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras, which I still think is the holy high kahuna of all his works.
Yeah, you mentioned some classics today. I'm curious, you are funny as could be. Like, you are hysterical. It's one of the reasons why I love listening to you talk. Do you think that plays a big role in your success as a coach?
Yes, I think those who relate to me are usually relating to the pop culture references and to the irreverence. They like the weirdness. So that's great. Now, it's also alienating to those who don't like the weirdness, which is also great.
Yeah. No, I mean, maybe it's the outlier in me. I absolutely love it.
Thank
we
you.
haven't well, people are sick of hearing me ask you a billion questions. So we have a bunch of people that want to throw some questions your way. You ready?
Bring it.
All right. Tom Doherty, you are up.
Hey, Keren. I have a question for you. Since I'm a docent at the Oakland Zoo and I love our tigers, does that make me a cat person?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Just want to make sure. More so, I have a question. You talked about your involvement in suicide prevention hotline. If you don't mind me asking, what was the driver for that?
Crisis text line, the biggest hotline in the world that has now expanded to more than 15 countries, saved my life. At some point, through the collapse of my systems, I don't mind telling you, I went through a really dark moment. I couldn't find a job for more than 6 months. I was sleeping on people's couches. And, you know, Downton Abbey can only take you so far before you start getting really sad. And after Downton Abbey season 2 ended, I got really sad. And when I got really sad, I started to remember that in the Army, I'm a former officer. In the Army, one of the things that I loved doing was suicide counseling. I can make people laugh. I'm pretty good at listening. And I genuinely love to talk. And the average call with a suicidal caller or a distressed caller is 45 minutes. I can talk for 45 minutes, no problem. And that's when I signed up for Crisis Text Line. I did all of the hours of training and I joined. And I'm telling you, Tom, it really saved my life. Because what happens when you start to genuinely serve, to really focus your attention through service, is you stop thinking about yourself. It's not just about gaining perspective. It's truly about living without you, which is a great way to live. I recommend it for anybody who's interested in changing their life.
Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
I'm curious from just a quick question. I know I said I wasn't going to ask anymore, but from your time in the service in the Israeli army, like what's the biggest thing you learned?
I learned so much. Please do not judge me for being part of an army that's very unpopular at the moment. I am Israeli. It is mandatory. We have to serve. I think I learned above all that it's an honor to serve.
Mhm.
that it's an honor to serve, that everybody should serve any country in which they live and be a part of something that is so fundamental to all of us. That was what really allowed me to enjoy those years tremendously. And since then, I think it's instilled in me a discipline all the time that kind of counteracts any form of complaining. It's an honor to serve.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to ask. Brent Lavin, you're up.
Hey, Keren, thanks so much. A lot of gold nuggets here. I'm kind of in the middle of this, and this is very similar to Scott's kind of question, which is, I've been the corporate guy. I'm about to break out in the next 6 months to do my own thing. It's not coaching, so settle. But I guess in your experience trying to break free, like what's one thing for somebody that's kind of lived in corporate for say 15 years, the one thing that successful people do versus those that can't make that leap?
It's desire, belief. If you understand that you cannot fail, Brent.
Yeah.
You cannot fail. There's no plan B. If you understand there's no plan B, as long as there is a little bit of a plan B, it's kind of like when I go on a diet. If there's Magnums in the fridge, I'm eating them. There's no plan B. So take away the safety nets. Now, listen, it's okay to know that there are safety nets. You can always go back. But why would you? This side is better. I really hope that this gives you the tremendous courage. And if you ask me what the point of Gilded is, because Gilded is not yet the tactical book, it's to set you free in your heart from the fear so the desire can truly emerge from you. The desire in a form of faith, in a form of knowing. And that's also what Jim Collins is ultimately talking about. Those of us who do things right and don't shortcut, the reason we do it is because we know that this is it.
Thanks. I love that. I'm literally in the middle of it, and I can't wait to report back in a couple of months. So
I can't wait. Congratulations, Mazel.
It's interesting. When I started my first business 10 years ago, and this either makes me stupid or I don't know what, I never even contemplated, like, what if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
I knew it was going to work. And it never even dawned on me that it wouldn't, and it did.
That's really the difference. I had a business before this, the 90s. I had a tiny little attempt at a business before this, but I know why it failed, and it didn't fail because we weren't the most talented people on the planet. David Fudge, my former business partner, and I are both multi-millionaires now. It's because we both had a fallback. We were like, I don't know, if it doesn't work out, I can always run back. No running back to mommy. I know this works out. We're going all in. You should get a tattoo, Brent. All in right here.
We'll be looking for that on our next call.
Yeah.
All right, Teddy, you're up, my friend.
Hey, Keren, thank you. You mentioned something, and I'm paraphrasing here, that we have gotten used to working in ways that are very unproductive. And I think you said something about we need to work within our preferences and our behavioral tendencies. That might not be the exact word to use, but
yes, that was.
I'd love to hear you unpack that idea a bit more and how you think through the process of discovering what are my tendencies and my preferences to work the most productively that I can.
So the first thing I use is how you're doing. If you're very, very overwhelmed, it means you're very likely blowing up your energy and you're not using it productively. Then I moved into assessment science, and then I move into the woo-woo. So I'm going to talk you through all of this. The first thing that I understand is that people show up for the time management problems and overwhelm, which is PS ridiculous, because all of us have read books on time management, and it's a pretty simple fix. Why does it still not work? It still doesn't work because we're expending our energies almost all the time in ways that are completely contradictory to the way we actually think, communicate, and move. The second thing I then use is assessment science. I prefer DISC. How many people here are familiar with DISC? Great. How many people here are familiar with Myers-Briggs? Great. Don't use Myers-Briggs. It's about as accurate as a horoscope. DISC is more accurate. I will stand against any Myers-Briggs assessors. DISC is more accurate, more consistent over the years. And what we usually understand is that you fall into a couple of buckets. Fast-paced and people-oriented, fast-paced, task-oriented, slow-paced, task-oriented, slow-paced, people-oriented. I happen to be, now this is going to be amazing to all y'all, not shocking that I'm people-oriented, but super slow-paced. So for many years, Teddy, I'm like, why am I overwhelmed? No one can focus like I can. I have yet to be bested in the homework department because I just don't have the same energy. I just don't have the same energy. I move very slowly. I actually am extraordinarily methodical. I will repeat things 1,000 times before actually getting them. That's why I need so much more time. And my attention is only available to me until around 3 p.m. Has nothing to do with diet, just a sleepy person. Now, I didn't really understand this for many years, and this is where the esoteric or the woo-woo comes in. There are also philosophies like human design that can be introduced here. They're definitely more in the woo channel, but they happen to have unusual correlations sometimes with behavioral style, and they explain a lot to us about how people are working. Now, when all of us are working basically at the same pace, particular entrepreneurs who never stop working, or high-paced executives who never stop working, we all understand that we're blowing up our energy. The classic Coach Keren client is a high D, high I. How many people here who know DISC know are DIs? There you go. So you know, here's what's happening to you. You see this little chip at the end of the cord for the computer? So this chip prevents all the electricity coming out of the out of the wall and blowing up the computer. Y'all are missing this chip. You do not moderate your energy. You just blow it up and exhaust yourself. Blow it up, exhaust yourself. It's fast collapse, fast collapse. So again, when we start to understand what patterning is most likely to align with yours, we know where the correction needs to lie and how we can start to really align your pace with something that's much more sustainable for you. I hope that helps, Teddy. But yeah, that's one of the principal things we go through.
Yeah, thanks so much.
He has even more questions. Teddy, you had another question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to help Kathy out. I don't want Kathy to feel anxious dropping that in the chat.
Thanks, Teddy.
But I do, Keren. So we've talked a lot about individuals, but you've been around tons of great teams. I'm curious for your perspective on the characteristics of the best teams you've been around and what makes them healthy and thriving. I'm trying not to use the word high performing.
No, it's not. That's not it.
Yeah, so I would love your perspective on
or talent, by the way.
Teams.
Yeah. So the number one thing that creates really high functioning teams is trust. And trust is only created at the top. Transparency. This is why I talk so much about integrity and about honesty. It's why I talk openly about my age, even though I'm sure you all gasped when you realized how much over 40 I am. Thank you for your gasps. The importance of honesty cannot be overstated. The importance of being able to take questions and questioning at all times it cannot be overstated. The importance of admitting when you made a mistake cannot be overstating, of tolerating failure to a point, of course, and working with extraordinarily disciplined and thorough expectations. And expectation relay, that's 50% of the game. 50% of the game. It will undo most dysfunctions. It will encourage tremendous teams. The second has to do with camaraderie, and camaraderie has to do with communication style, and the honoring of communication style. So again, DISC factors in here a lot. Many times we can explain to you why you really don't understand your team. For example, one of the last teams I was on site with was a legal counsel group in one of the big corporations. Every single one of them, high S, high C, one high D, high I. I was like, and he's so frustrated. And I'm sitting there going, of course you are. They don't have the same concept of time. They don't have the same concept of risk. And it's not because they're bad or cuckoo maluku. They're different. And so we really all need to bridge this gap. And if we can bridge this gap, we can sort of understand how to make you play together properly. The best analogy here, Teddy, is, of course, the greatest documentary series of all time, The Last Dance on Netflix. I'm assuming You've all seen it. And if you haven't, please spend 10 hours this week watching The Last Dance, a documentary about sports ball in Netflix. It is the story of how Phil Jackson, a magnificent tall coach, took the Chicago Bulls from regular people to the greatest team who ever played, including the one and only Michael Jordan. And the best analogy here is it didn't even matter at some point that Michael was so talented, because even that nice man who now coaches the San Francisco team, Something Kerr, also rises to the challenge because he's part of something that is so well adapted, that the communication styles are so well honored, and everyone is therefore included in a process equally. Does that make sense? Thank you for allowing me to mention Phil Jackson.
If you broke down their offense, I would be very, very impressed. Very impressed.
Well, it all comes down to the triangle.
It's there, man. There you go.
System.
So good. So good. I'm curious, who do you, when people approach you to be coached, who do you decide not to work with?
Skeptics.
Skeptics?
Yes, people who start sentences with, here's the problem with that, and here's what I think is nonsense about your universe, and why I think this is actually ridiculous, and I've tried everything, and I don't really think that this is going to work. Usually, by the way, those people have been sort of forced into coaching. Their husband or wife told them that they need to be coached. Their corporation has told them that they need to be coached, but they're usually quite resistant. It's funny because I work with several, I think the clinical term for them is a-holes. I love them so much, but they're not resistant to the work. They're still collaborative. They're just combative. It's like working with Larry David. It's actually quite amusing. There's a big difference between combative, but still engaged, and not engaged. Not engaged is like, it's like my rabbi always says, if an old lady doesn't want to cross the street, don't drag her. My job is to just sit there and go, I don't really know why you're here, but thank you so much for calling. Let me know when you're in the middle of a shitstorm. See ya.
Interesting. I just had an experience.
Coachable, and coachable means you're ready to dance.
It's very interesting. So I've had this knee problem for like 2 years, and I've gone to every orthopedic surgeon. I've done every rehab. I've done dry needle. I've done everything. And Kathy has this friend who I call her like a witch doctor. I don't know what the hell she does. So I went to her. It's like last straw, super skeptical. And she essentially didn't even look at my knee. She's like, oh, it's not your knee, it's your neck. And then she did like this, and it worked. So I don't know. Am I the exception to the rule? Because I was super skeptical, but now I'm like a believer. I still don't know what the hell she's doing to me.
But you still went. You still went. And I posted something a day ago. The doors that you want won't open until you become the version of yourself who's ready to walk through those doors. Basically, almost any moment in our life that allows us a portal passage is a softening. There was a softening there somewhere. There was a softening there. The desire to heal for you was bigger than your skepticism.
Okay. Can you say that again? I like the beginning part, but I didn't catch it all.
In my post, that was brilliant and you liked, thank you so much, I said that the universe will not let you cross doors until you are the version of yourself that is ready to cross that door. Wow. There is a moment in which we sort of find alignment within ourselves. And alignment for Brent is when you truly know who you are. You really genuinely are one with your desire. When we are against our desire, when we're frustrated, we are not aligned with our true selves. We are working in opposition to our true selves. And as there is only when that softens, even for a second, by the way, even by throwing you off and going, we're going to go over your neck, you're able to go through that door.
What's next for you? I know you're still on book tour for probably the foreseeable future, but what's next for you?
I'm on book tour until November, and then I'm taking a break like all Jewish people. I'm going to Miami. Next year, I will rest for a little bit, continuing to do my programs. And then in May of 2026, we are launching the sequel, Guilt Free, which is spelled Gilt. How genius is that?
Pretty good.
So and then we're just going to do this again. Yay.
Are you a sprinter or a marathon runner?
I'm a marathon.
You are.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
like Jerry Seinfeld. I write every day for 2 hours. That's it. And believe it or not, it works.
And so what form does that take? Like, walk me through, you sit down at a desk and you just start freeform writing, or are there prompts?
No, first I sit down and create the structure. Then I wrestle with the structure.
Cup of coffee?
So much coffee. You have no idea.
Okay.
This is a real disease.
Right.
It's always after sessions. Sessions are always first. They command all of my energy. They take everything first. So they have to be done first. And then I will sit down with the structure. Once I finished wrestling with the structure, I know what to do, because essentially I've already worked out the chapter title. I've already worked out the core ingredients, and I just need to write that. It's the same thing with my programs. I create one program every year. Once I understand that what I really need everybody to know to get them from A to Z, what the framework is, what the components are that you need. If you're buying this book, if you're buying this program, you want to get from here to here. What are the components? And then I fill in the blanks. And that's it. And then the last part of the process is the hardest, which is make it half as long and twice as good. As my husband always says, the editing is brutal, but it makes it so much better. Just revisiting.
What did I not ask you about Gilded that you're like, come on, Scott, seriously?
I loved all of your questions. I hope that you've left people as eager as I am to revisit these ideas. I would appreciate it enormously, the love and support, if you checked out Gilded, of course. And if you had any further questions, just ask. I am as friendly as I look.
You are so fun. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been like the hour just absolutely flew by. So support her on social media, buy Gilded, leave a review, because those mean everything to authors. And you know, she's one of us, so she's part of the Outlier project. And, you know, I just think we can't support each other enough. And if you've got a question, you know, feel free to send her a message. What's the best way to get a hold of you? LinkedIn message, email?
I don't pay attention so much to LinkedIn messages because I don't like LinkedIn, but I love Instagram, like all young people that are hip. At Coach Keren. Keren is spelled with 2 E's, so not a Karen. Get it? But yeah, that's the best way to chat with me all the time. And just get in touch. I'm always here.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much. You're the best.
Thank you so much, Scott, for this honor. This has been amazing, y'all. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks, guys.